All right, great, cool. So what did you think of last season of Better Call Saul? I know you've been blogging about it, but I guess what's your quick recap rundown, like your general feelings about this last season, and I guess like the overall show now that it's over. So,
Well, I was obviously very excited to see this final season.
hmm.
Um, yes, because I am a gigantic fucking Breaking Bad nerd. Like I just,
Oh, yeah,
I
so
don't,
am I. That's why I was excited too. Yeah.
yeah. Because like I don't know how long you have been, but like I started watching Breaking Bad like at the halfway point in 2019.
Oh,
I was just
really?
like, yeah, so I'm more of a recent fan, I guess. Um,
Yeah, I guess I'm a pretty recent fan too, because I started watching this show probably around that same time. It was probably 2019, 2020. It was during the pandemic, and I got home and I just was scrolling through Netflix, and I was like, I guess I've never seen Breaking Bad. I guess I'll watch this, I guess. Turns out it ended up being one of my favorite shows ever. So I guess that
yeah.
was a pretty good investment. I remember it was like 9 or 10 p.m. when I started watching the final season of Breaking Bad, and even though it was like 1 or 2 a.m. at the time, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna watch El Camino like right after, and I did. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I did it. So, but yeah, naturally, I was excited for Better Call Saul. Um, we can talk about comparisons later, but I guess I just kind of want to focus on just like the final season right now. So, like, what did you think overall of the final season? I thought it was great. Yeah. So,
Yeah, so yeah, that was basically what I was going at. Where so after I became literally, basically Breaking Bad became my life for like 2 months. It was actually very unhealthy. I started watching Better Call Saul right after, and that
mhm.
became my obsession. So everything stopped at 2020, and so it was basically like 2 years of just waiting to get that high.
Yeah,
and and finally we got it, and holy shit, it, it
it
was
was great. Yeah.
it was amazing. It really
Mhm.
was. Like, to me, the first thing that like really just threw me off, it was that, the cinematography of the show, both shows, is good.
Yeah,
It's,
but I
I
think
would
the
say, very good.
cinematography in this show in particular is like an improvement upon the original. Not to say like the cinematography in Breaking Bad was like bad or anything like that, but it's like, just the things that they particularly linger on, just sort of like I what I appreciate about not just this last season, but just Better Call Saul in general, is that they kind of linger on these like shots. Like they have these really like artsy intros for each episode. Um, and they linger on like little shots. Like I remember there was an episode, I think it was the episode, spoilers by the way, we're going to be spoiling the show. It was the episode where Nacho dies. They linger on this like shot of like a flower and stuff like that. It was like really fucking awesome. It's like the little things like that is like what I liked so much about the cinematography. Not that they didn't do that in Breaking Bad, but it's like I thought it was like a whole other level in this show. So
Yeah, they definitely took a lot of effort to make, literally every single shot in this last season to just be as perfect as and cinematic as possible. Like, I think it really, I don't know if El Camino was made right before this
I
season,
think it was,
but
yeah, it was before the season, that's for sure. Yeah.
yeah, because I think it definitely like kind of rubbed them off a bit, because El Camino, they really try to make it like as close as possible to, like, an actual Breaking Bad movie. So
Yeah.
once they're working on this one, it feels like, okay, we're gonna do it again, but with the finale. But
Yeah.
because it's insane, like it's legitimately insane how well, um the composition is, really, because it doesn't feel like, oh, it's a TV show, so we have to like film it quickly, so we have to find like the best shots. Like, it feels like every single thing is planned beforehand, which
Oh
is
yeah. That's
literally insane.
that's what I appreciate about not just this show, but just all of the shows that Vince Gilligan produces. That like they feel meticulously made. It's like it feels like the story, like they clearly had a point A to point B moment, and you can see like how everything kind of leads up to that final moment with the last episode, which I think was really, really excellent. um you know, I feel like the show, like the writing, like doesn't always get like enough credit when it comes to these shows. Like we always talk about like stuff like cinematography and the acting, but like I feel like the writing also like deserves a lot of praise, because I loved a lot of the um sort of reincorporation that Vince Gilligan just like really knows how to do. And I think like the ultimate culmination of that is the episode when Walter White and Jesse Pinkman come back. They show up in the cameo. It was the episode where they take Saul out to the RV. Yeah, and like put him out in the desert and stuff like that. And the it's crazy how this show just came to existence because of that one line that Saul Goodman said in Breaking Bad. But you can see how like it isn't just some like cash grab or some shit. It's like they expanded upon that moment, you know, by having that scene that happens after that moment where Saul, you know, talks to Jesse and Walter in the RV, and they're talking about like who's Lalo and like blah 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 blah, and you know, like showcasing how like the Saul Goodman of Better Call Saul, like how much kind of like scummier and worse he's gotten, like to that
Mm-hmm.
moment where we find him in Breaking Bad when he's like collaborating with like Heisenberg and Jesse and all these people. Like it's, I think that's a really interesting connection. And I think like, and I always like love like little moments like that, you know, that like I think those moments in particular is when like the writing really shines. Like the fan servicey moments never get too fan servicey because like it's always in service of something, you know. And I always appreciate how the show incorporated its fan service. So
Yeah, it was legitimately. I think you're right that it doesn't get as much credit because it's one thing to write a story, but then writing a prequel story it's especially hard.
Yeah, I would say that's
Especially
harder than like just making a
yeah,
sequel. Yeah, so
the
and
situation that they were in it was really shitty because like they set themselves like 4 years before Breaking Bad, but they
mhm.
also set up that this story has to end post Breaking Bad, so they really have to like juggle both worlds. And I am still shook that they made it work
Yeah,
because
it's funny you
it's so
mentioned that.
hard.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because like yeah, like this is a prequel, so like obviously characters like Gus and the Salamanca like cousins and like Hector himself and like all these, like they're not gonna die, like obviously, because they show up in Breaking Bad. But what I love about this show is that in spite knowing that they're going to live, like they're not gonna die in this show, it still does a fantastic job at building tension. Like I mentioned before, my favorite episode was that moment um where Nacho kind of like has that final moment. He has that final standing ground, and you know, like he like tells like Hector, he's like, I'm the one who like swapped out your pills, and like I'm the reason why you're like this, and blah 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 blah. And then he just like, and then once he sets free, he like makes this stand, like he has a gun against Bolsa. Before he shoots himself, and like that scene was genuinely like intense. It's like yeah, obviously none of these characters are gonna live. I mean, yeah, they're gonna live, but for a second, I completely forgot that I was like, oh shit, are they gonna die? I mean, like they're not gonna die, but it's crazy that like the show like almost like gaslit me into thinking that someone like one of the characters might die, or at least like be like significantly impacted. It was really crazy. Like, and it's what I love about the show. It's that they can get that kind of emotion out of me.
Yeah, and that was like episode 3. Like
Yeah, that was crazy.
like
Yeah.
shit hit the fan 3 episodes in. like Jesus, calm
Yeah,
down.
like we had
It
like
was
what,
so
like
cool.
9 episodes left. It's like Jesus. It's like if this is episode 3, I don't know what's gonna happen in the rest of this shit. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was legitimately really bold of them to like really recontextualize a lot of Breaking Bad because
Hmm.
it's something that I talked about in the Discord where basically like you know with all of this that has happened, Breaking Bad just kind of seems like something that has nothing to do with the main story, and it just completely got out of control.
Oh
Because like
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like
That's interesting. It's like with all the things that we learn about this world, like we have the law side with like HHM and like Saul and like Kim, but we have all this like crime shit with like the Salamancas and like Gus and like, you know, Don Eladio and stuff. It's like when you look at what happened in Breaking Bad, it's like, wow, like this is kind of like small compared to what happened in like this show. It's like it's crazy.
Yeah, but and also like, for example, things that seem like not that important all of a sudden just makes the show a lot, more dense and a lot more complicated. Like for example, the laugh. The laugh is just this really cool set that they built for season 3 or whatever the fuck. But with this new series, you come to learn that this was such a difficult, humongous task for Gus, and it's also a place that many people have died there.
Yeah,
Like not
like
just the guys you see in Breaking Bad, but the fact that Howard and Lalo are buried in there is like
yeah, that's insane.
literally disturbing.
Like they were like when Walt and like oh god, what was the other chemist name from Breaking Bad? Jesus.
Fucking
Gale, that was it. Yeah,
Gail,
when
yes.
Walt and Gale were like making coffee and joking around and like making crystal meth, they were like working on top of like fucking Howard and Lalo's body. Like that terrifies me to know, like to because I'm planning on rewatching Breaking Bad at some point, and like
Not even
knowing what
not
I
even that scene. Like not even that scene. Remember that scene where Jesse's just like fucking around in the laugh, like just being a
Oh
dumb
yeah, yeah,
idiot.
yeah.
like,
It's like
imagine that
it's like
scene.
that meme. It's like they don't know that Lalo and Howard Hamlin are like buried underneath. They're like
Yeah.
a party meme. It's like I think of like that meme.
Yeah,
uh
it's so wild that they made that lab so much more like dark, like even more than it already was.
yeah, it's crazy how much they expand on these little things that like I just kind of like didn't pay that much attention to. It's like you said, like the lab, like is just a thing that just was just a setting in Breaking Bad that I just kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever. They make crystal meth. But like to see all this backstory, and it's not just in this last season where you see all this trauma, it's like all the stuff that happened before. Like, you know, it's like we mentioned they're traumatized like Gus, but like it was equally traumatizing for Mike too, because like this is like prior to that last season, like when they hired those like German workers, and he's like forced to kill Werner Ziegler, as Lalo would call him. Like that was
He,
Ziegler. Yeah, that was like that was equally as traumatizing to Mike. And you can see like the effect of him killing Werner like on like some of the other characters. Like there was that really awesome scene, I think it was at the end of episode 2, where Gus gets the idea of using Nacho's dad as like some kind of leverage to get to pop Nacho out of like hiding. And even though he says it in Spanish, like Mike just knows Gus so well that like he just immediately says like, no, we're not doing that. Like you made me kill like an innocent person before. Like I'm not gonna let another innocent person like get in the way of like our shenanigans again. Like I thought that was like really, really excellent. And that I think that was also really excellent for on like Giancarlo Esposito's like performance as well, because like this is the first time that I've seen Gus like actually scared. I mean, like I guess he was kind of nervous with Walter near the end of season 3, but I wouldn't say he was necessarily, or maybe it was season 4, I don't remember, but like I don't think he was necessarily scared of Walter. He was just like saw him as another like competition that he had to compete against. But like Lalo was someone who genuinely like terrified him to the point where it's like he was he had like men guarding his home, and like he had a body double, and he was always wearing a bulletproof vest. Like that stuff like that was like really, really interesting, and to like see that through Esposito's performance was like fantastic in my opinion. So
yeah, and also Lalo, of course, it all has to do with Tony Dalton's performance, which is
yeah,
amazing. But
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
he's amazing in the show, and I do think that Lalo. It's not that Lalo was the saving grace of the show, but it's a very good thing that they brought him up, because they really needed like some kind of antagonist that actually felt threatening in a show that, once again, it's very difficult to like feel any kind of like tension where
Yeah.
where it's going. But Lalo was such a character that it's just pure chaos with this guy. Like they took it to the point where like the one character that you thought wouldn't die, which was Howard, like that character was the one guy that
Oh
would just
yeah,
say,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that that's if he doesn't die, that's fine. He can just live his life and not be in Breaking Bad. That makes sense. And it's really brilliant how they took the one character that you thought wouldn't die, and Lalo just comes in and shoots him.
And
Like,
I
it's
think that scene of
brutal.
itself is like really, really like it kind of came out of nowhere for me because of the fact
It
that
did.
like yeah, like what this show did really well is that like Better Call Saul is almost like two shows. Like there's one show that's essentially like the Law and Order, like lawyer stuff with Chuck and Jimmy and like Kim and all this stuff and Howard Hamlin, and then this other stuff, this other show is just more Breaking Bad, just like the Salamancas and Pollos Hermanos and all this shit. Like they did a really excellent job of making these worlds very separate because like they're not really meant to intertwine with each other. And like that scene where Lalo shoots Howard, like that scene is really, really like shocking because like we have never seen these two worlds collide, and the fact that they actually collided for the first time and very violently, mind you, it's like I think that's what made that shocking more than anything. Like yeah, obviously Howard dying like came out of nowhere, but like I think within that context it makes it even more shocking. So
Yeah, exactly. And like the way, because a lot of people were thinking, like, oh, is Kim gonna die or whatever? And I think what the show needed is it was like a good explanation of why Kim is not in Saul's life.
yeah, and this was
But
a really good explanation. Yeah.
yeah, it's not just a really good explanation. It's actually kind of insane how, because you can tell that a lot of this show is more Peter Gould than actually Vince Gilligan,
Yeah.
because he's a lot more of a human kind of person, whereas Vince Gilligan, he's obviously a great dramatic director, but he's a lot more, oh, fireworks, big action, whatever the fuck. Peter
Yeah.
Gould is like tries to make it all come home,
I think
because
that's what
yeah,
that's very apparent to me like in the last two episodes because the second to last episode was directed by Vince Gilligan and the last episode was directed by Peter Gould, and you can see that quality very well. Like the second to last episode was the one correct my memory, but like that was the one with like all like the stealing and like getting the guy into the store and like stealing on those clothes, right? That was that episode.
yeah, no, the one where they steal the clothes at the mall was at the episode 10. So it was like,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay. Well,
yeah,
either
yeah, it
way,
was
like,
episode
yeah,
10.
the second to last episode was still pretty explosive with the whole like Marion discovering that all she needed to
Yes.
do was Google con man Albuquerque or fucking whatever. Um and then, that was pretty explosive in of itself. Like, I mean, it's no like blowing off like half of Gus's face or anything, but like it was still pretty explosive. But like the final season was surprisingly like much tamer and much calmer. Like, okay, maybe this is a better comparison. Like, let's compare the ending to Breaking Bad compared to the ending of Better Call Saul. Like, Breaking Bad ends with a machine gun mowing down Nazis and this like final explosive of 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 Walt like staring at his chemistry set before like dying on the ground, and there's this like really awesome like overhead shot where like it pulls back and stuff. But here it's like it's much calmer. It's much with Better Call Saul, it's much calmer, it's more quiet, it's more human, I guess, if that's the appropriate term, where it's like it doesn't have any of those like fancy camera works or like crazy explosions and stuff like that, but it's like just as much impact is happening with that last season where he like essentially just kind of like admits like he like, look, I did all this crap, give me all the punishment, blah 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 blah. Like he essentially it's him kind of like returning to his old self that was like Jimmy McGill, and then having that last cigarette, which was, by the way, like the color scheme of that was like fantastic. Like the whole like lighting the cigarette is the only like color that sparks from that scene, because the entire like last three episodes are shot in black and white, and like that color was like a great contrast to it. And the whole like Jimmy slash Saul doing the finger gun thing, like that was awesome. Like that, like very different kind of ending from Breaking Bad, but I think just as effective.
Exactly, because it's really great how like they kept almost all of the drama, not all of the drama, but the main focus on both Kim and Jimmy.
Yeah.
Like they really made those two like the center of it all. And it's really obvious how like by this point, it's really obvious how like the one thing that drives Jimmy is the people around them. So when Chuck dies, he goes full on, I guess, slipping Jimmy or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And once Timmy's gone from his life, he goes absolutely, Saul Goodman. He just goes into his persona. It's honestly really sad watching him like just become this shell of a person just because the one person that really like loved them for what it was is gone.
Yeah.
But it's also like it also explains the ending because at the ending, he wants to go full Saul Goodman again, but once he sees Kim accepting, once he sees Kim at the court, it's just enough for him to just be like, all right, I can't fucking do this anymore. Like I have to be like honest and like I confess everything because he might be free, but he doesn't have Kim. So that's really the one thing that he cares about.
Yeah.
So
I think that's like that adds an extra layer and dimension to Saul's character because like in Breaking Bad, if you don't have any of this context, you're just kind of like, oh, he's just kind of a sleazebag, he's just kind of a piece of shit. Like the whole like, he'll do anything, he'll like fight dirty when it comes to the law and stuff like that. But I think this like yeah, this show really adds an extra layer to his character because like I think I'm slowly realizing like I mean, I've always understood the importance of both Chuck and Kim, but like Chuck and Kim are kind of like these like anchors of like morality for Saul because like when we see Saul in the first season of Better Call Saul, he's just normal Jimmy McGill. He's trying to be like the everyman lawyer. He's trying to help people. But as his relationship with Chuck starts to widen further and further, he becomes more tempted to go back to, slipping Jimmy. He's more tempted to do his schemes and his shenanigans and stuff like that. And I think the ultimate moment of that occurred was the whole like the courtroom scene where Chuck's like, he defecated in a sunroof or blah 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 blah. Like that was the moment where like he went full slipping Jimmy. But even after Chuck's death, he still had that sense of like morality, I guess, to him. When because he still had Kim, but I think when Kim kind of fell to the dark side and she started doing her slip and Kimmy type of stuff and like doing schemes and trying to like prank Howard Hamlin, like he goes further and further down the rabbit hole. And then once Kim leaves, like he has no one, so he just kind of goes full Saul Goodman. And I think when you look at it from that angle and you use that to kind of re-examine his character in Breaking Bad, like I think it just makes his character that much more tragic. And I think the ending really like is that much more impactful because he's kind of tired of being Saul Goodman. Like there was that moment in the bus where he was like, I'm not Saul Goodman, I'm Jimmy McGill, but the prisoners keep calling him Saul Goodman. And I think like that's him sort of like, okay, whatever, rather than running away from his past like he did in the rest of the show, he accepts his past for who he is, but he still wants to continue living as Jimmy McGill. And I think that was a really, really subtle but just like very excellent choice to like take this character. So
and also it's also kind of a reminder of who he was because at the very at the scene right before, sorry, is where Chuck tells him, oh, it doesn't matter what client you have to give him your all, you have to defend them, blah blah blah. And these guys treat him like he's a god, like holy shit, it's Saul Goodman, like. And so it's almost like he's proud that he has gained so much respect out of criminals, but at the end of the day, it's still like respect. He did give it his all to like try and help people. That's really all he really wanted.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah.
And it's like, and he still kind of did what Chuck asked him. He helped people just like in the scummiest way possible, but he still technically did that. Like, like even though Saul Goodman is, this sleazebag lawyer, like I still think of like the good deeds he did, even in like Breaking Bad, where when Jesse is essentially like evicted from like his aunt's house or something like that, and like he basically manages to get Jesse's parents to like sell for much lower because of like the meth lab and stuff. Like little moments like that, like I think are like shining moments of like Jimmy McGill, like him trying to like help people. I mean, he's still like hugely benefited from it, but I think like little moments like that like make me recontextualize his character.
Yeah, and also like you can see it in his character in like everybody's now showing that scene where like he's talking to Walt right after Skylar figures it out, and he's just like, oh, there's other fish in the sea and whatever the fuck, you can get over it, man. And then he goes to his car and he seems like very like out of it.
Hmm.
So I think the writers always knew that Saul or Jimmy was always kind of like this very dark person, behind this, oh, so charismatic person. But I think in this one they really pulled through with it all, and it's interesting. Sorry, that like I said, this last season really had to work with a really weird structure where
Uh-huh.
basically we have to end the series and we also have to explain what happens after this other series.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre.
And it pulls it off
Like,
very well. Like I would say it pulls off
yeah,
excellently. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because not only are the flashbacks, it's so it would have been so easy if you just show, oh, there's Walter White, you just clap, whatever, but it does allow the scenes to like really, show how these people like affected Saul, and also how much these characters like really didn't know what were they getting into. Like for example, that scene where Kim meets Jesse, you
Yeah.
know, like it really shows. It's kind of funny seeing how like Jesse at this point is like so completely ignorant,
Yeah.
and while Kim has seen it all, so it's almost like talking to two opposites, where like Jesse's like, oh, I'm Captain Cook and I'm this badass
Yeah.
motherfucker, blah blah blah. Like,
Hmm.
he's not full of himself. She's just being such an idiot. While Kim has seen what that attitude leads up, so she just kind of like out of it,
Yeah.
which is very interesting.
It's I think it's like very poetic. The whole like Kim leaves the, I guess if we're gonna call this the overall Breaking Bad like story, Kim leaves like at the end of like Jimmy McGill's life, and Jesse enters the story at like the start of Saul Goodman's life. I think that's like a really poetic way to have these characters meet, and they didn't need to do this, but the fact that they did it was like really really awesome. Um, I wanted to say how like to me like there were actually kind of two endings in this show. So the ending one was just basically the end of like just the, I guess you can call it the Better Call Saul story, like main story, though all the stuff with like 4 years before Breaking Bad, the like dealing with Lalo and like
Yeah.
and the nacho stuff. Like that was the end of like story one, and the end of story two, which is all the Gene Takovic like flash forward scenes. Like though, like that was like the ending. They ended that like 3 episodes later. Like the end of story one kind of reminded me the ending of Breaking Bad, while the ending of story two kind of reminded me of the ending of El Camino, where one is like very much explosive and like lots of guns and shooting and like action and like stuff like that, but then the last 3 episodes are kind of like moments of like self-reflection and like dealing with like your past and stuff like that. And that's basically what the El Camino movie was. Like outside of like that Wild West duel that Jesse has with that one guy, like there's basically no action in that movie. um and it's more of like a self-reflective character study, and that's what I would say about these last 3 episodes of Better Call Saul. It's like now this is a character study on like Saul Goodman as like Gene Takovic going back to his old Slip and Jimmy ways in Nebraska, but then him finally giving up that life when he like accepts going to jail like for his love for Kim. Like I think that was like really really interesting. It's like it everything kind of comes full circle, and that's what I really appreciate about Vince Gilligan's like style of writing and like the way he kind of incorporates everything into this world he's created. So,
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
mhm.
I guess talking more generally, like overall the whole series, the music is like amazing.
Awesome.
Like
Yeah.
not just the score by Dave Porter, which is really great. Like
Yeah.
it's really ambient, but it's also really intense when it needs to be.
Hmm.
I really love uh, how in the last episode they reincorporated the song where Kim and Jimmy are smoking in the first episode,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, I noticed that
they
too. Yeah.
redo it. They redo
Hmm.
it to make it like a lot more I guess more of a farewell,
Yeah.
like a more conclusive kind of song. But also the licensed music they use is very different because a lot of the music that they use in Breaking Bad is like very like stylish, very in your face. Like I think of that montage at the end season, I think 4, where Jesse and Mike are like at these like spots, getting meth or something, and
Oh, yeah, yeah, I know what
you
you're
you
talking
get you
about.
get
Yeah.
like this Spanish rap at this montage, which is it's very like in your face. While in this, the music is like a lot more of a vibe. It's very jazzy, very like ambient. You still have the cool montages, but like
It's not too
compare
distracting, but you know what it's there and it helps
like
like drive the story. Yeah.
exactly like compare the music, compare that montage to like the montage of like um Kim and Jim with the split screen and that something stupid cover.
Yeah,
Like
that was awesome. Yeah. Something
yeah,
stupid.
like
Yeah.
it's so much more like I'm gonna say it again. It's so much more human. Like it's not so much funny cartels hijinks. It's more like it's a lot more like personal. It feels so. I really love the way they took the music in this season as well. I love
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot too, but I like I said, it's like it wasn't like that. I forgot which episode that this song had, but it was like in Breaking Bad there was like that opening like music where they had like the mariachi band and stuff like that, like singing about
Oh,
like the legend
the
of like Heisenberg or something like
yeah,
that.
it's not I guess just tiny correction. It's not a mariachi band.
Oh,
It's a banda, and they're singing a corrido, which is basically like a traditional song here in Mexico,
oh,
which is
okay.
like oh, we're singing about this cartel guy and blah blah blah. It's actually kind of I actually kind of really love that cold open because it showed that the creators actually like put some research into the whole cartel business, and they're like, oh, people in Mexico make songs about them, so let's just make one about Heisenberg, which is really cool. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, like, well, yeah, thank you for correcting me on that. Yeah, I didn't know that. But yeah, I think
No worries.
when I think of like the music in that, it's like it's just a sharp contrast to like that like something stupid cover song where it's like they're both like almost equally like very obvious and very like forward about what type of tone they're trying to communicate, but like one is obviously going for more of that like explosive, oh, like Walter White, and like he's growing as legend as like Heisenberg, the cartel and stuff like that. And then but in this one it's more like softer, sort of like, these two people who love each other, who don't know if they're going to see the other person again. Like it was a really like interesting contrast when it comes to music. So yeah, I didn't really notice that at first, but like the more you talk about that, the more I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. And also I really love a lot of the this is something that really my friend which I do videos with, he pointed this out a lot, which is they use a lot of color to their advantage,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
the way they laid out, like obviously the most obvious one is black and white, oh, the color is out of his life, whatever. But even like in other episodes, like everybody makes fun of the yellow tint wherever they're in Mexico, but
Yeah.
I think this one is used a bit more sparingly, and it's
Yeah,
also like
Mexico looks less green in this one, so or
yeah.
yellow or whatever color they used. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more to like show like it's more like to show like oh, the yellow, it's supposed to be, it's not just supposed to be Mexico, it's supposed to be like oh, like the criminal world, while blue is a lot more used in like legal shit. And and especially and in this one, something that was very like I said, the not just black and white, but just black in general. Like in this season, like just dark colors were really used to this to their advantage in this one
Yeah, yeah,
season.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Mhm.
so, yeah, it was really fresh because you don't really see a lot of shows that like utilizes dark colors.
You
Like the
don't
only
really see a lot of shows use color to this extent just in general. Like I can't
yeah,
think of another
exactly.
show that uses color like this in such a detailed way.
Yeah, the only one that I can think of is like Mr. Robot, and Mr. Robot is like
Oh,
completely
yeah, yeah.
different, so it's
Mhm.
almost like a non-comparison. But that's the only one I can think of where like the colors are like very apparent
Mhm.
when they like think of a scene. So yeah,
Yeah, that and The Simpsons. So,
and The Simpsons. Yeah.
yeah. Um, I kind of wanted to talk about there was a scene that I found really kind of unexpected. So it was the literally like the last couple moments of the episode where they kill Lalo, where after all that shenanigan happens, Gus just kind of like goes to this hotel and has a glass of wine by himself and he's talking to this guy, and this is probably the most like casual and most like friendly he is to like another human being that's like not like a cartel member or a fellow employee or something like that. Like this is him genuinely having a conversation with something, and I think this is probably the only time that I've seen Gus act in such a human way, besides that flashback scene in Breaking Bad where young him and Max like meet Don and Claudia before they kill like Max in front of him. Like this is the only other time that I've seen Gus act in such a human way, and it was really really powerful when he just kind of like leaves, like when the guy like goes to get another bottle of wine or something like that, because it kind of shows sort of like the inner turmoil that this character is facing, because like he this is a man with like that's all business. He only cares about business. He wants to make sure that his operation is running smoothly and that he can like bring down the entire cartel and eventually have his run-ins with Walter White. But this is like just a moment where he just can kind of relax a little bit, and I think that was a really sort of poignant moment, and I think this is what makes me want a Gus spin-off more than anything, because like I kind of want to see more moments like that, like in a supposed like spin-off prequel show about Gustavo Fring. And I don't know if you had any comments about that.
um, yeah, I think it's great that you pointed it out because it's such a great way to end the character of Gus,
Yeah.
at least until now, because
Mhm.
it really shows you just how far he has gone, where he can like have normal human interactions,
Yeah.
uh, because he's just this person that's just completely fueled by rage. So I think that was a great way to like it's a great way to like end the characters, and like once you rewatch him in Breaking Bad, it all makes sense why he's so fueled by
And
all
I
this
think
anger.
that scene just even like it does an even better way highlights the difference between him and Walter White, because like Walter White, like his whole ordeal is that like he's two different people. He's like the guy who like attends his family and loves his family and like his wife and his son and Holly and all this shit, and then he's like Heisenberg, like the drug kingpin. But with Gus, like I mean, yeah, he kind of has that double-sidedness of him too, but not to the same extent, because like in a way he doesn't even have like that family side, because like it's all business with him. Like whether it's like pretending to be like the friendly manager of like Los Pollos Hermanos, or like being like this drug kingpin, like it's still always all business for him. Like he doesn't have that moment where he can have like a small moment of intimacy or personal connection with someone like Walter does with like Skylar, or um Walt Jr. Sorry, I mean Flynn. His name's Flynn, not Walt Jr. And Holly and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, like he doesn't have anything like that, and I think that just highlights how kind of lonely that like Gus is as a character. And like it's not like so focused where it's like a lot of people will notice, but like because I like Gus is probably one of my favorite characters in this entire universe, it's like seeing little moments like that, it's like, wow, like this is kind of impressive. And like they barely say anything. Like there's almost like little dialogue in this scene. So
Yeah, and I also think that that scene, and also not just that scene, like that scene is obviously like a very explicit example, but I think the whole season, and you can even argue the whole show, is about just like, because at the, I think it was in season 4 where the Mike's daughter-in-law introduces this idea of, oh, one day you're gonna wake up and not think about all the shit you've done, so that sort of thing. So, and it's a way to cope for all the characters, not just Mike, but just obviously Jimmy
yeah,
and
yeah,
Gus.
yeah.
And but I think the show does a really great job at showing. I think you can even say that the whole main focus of the show, or one of the main focuses, is to show how that philosophy is just bullshit.
Yeah.
Because you don't forget. Like you can try your best, but you'll never forget. Your life. You're just like in denial by that point. And you can see it in Mike, where he goes to Nacho's dad, and he tells him that his son is dead, but they'll avenge him. And his dad, really, really, the Nacho's dad is the wisest one, because he's like, like, I get what you're trying to say, but like, what are you going to gain by revenge? Like
Yeah.
you're just not even human anymore. You're just like fueled by the past. And I think that's a really great scene for Mike to reflect on how just far gone he is, and how everybody far gone he is. Like even Jimmy, like his entire Saul Goodman persona is just so that he can forget about all this shit with Howard and Kim.
Yeah.
And
And I
so
think
I
that's
think, yeah,
yeah, that's what I love about Mike's character. Because like this show is like technically about Saul Goodman, but like this is just as much about Mike as it is about Saul, because like he also kind of like has his own like, I mean, he doesn't like become like a Saul Goodman type, but he kind of like he also kind of goes through that similar transformation where he's like, like we get those flashbacks in the beginning of the show where he kills the cops who killed his son in like Philadelphia or something like that. I can't remember. um but he comes to Albuquerque to start a new life. He wants to like start anew. That's why he's like the ticket guy, like in front of the courthouse. But then like the life of crime just like keeps pulling him back in, and then now he's like the right hand man of Gus, one of the most powerful crime lords, and he's doing all this like sniper shit, all while like taking care of his 7 or 9 year old like granddaughter or something like that. It's like Mike's character arc is like just as interesting as Saul's. And what's funny is that like it took this show for me to like truly love Mike, because like I did like Mike in Breaking Bad, but I didn't really think much of him other than like, oh, he's the cool old guy who does cool old guy stuff. But in this, it kind of fleshes out his character much more, to the point where it's like, wow, like I actually give a shit about Mike now. Like, I mean, I still did in Breaking Bad, but like here, it's like I care about his character and his motivations and stuff like that. And like, I think that's really awesome. So, and I think the end of his story, like you said, with him talking to Nacho's dad, like that is a fitting ending to his character arc in this show.
yeah, exactly. And also, and although I do think that it was nice that they did show him at the final episode, because Mike is just as much of a protagonist in my opinion. So I was
Yeah.
glad that he was in it, at least for one scene. And the scene he was in, I mean, we can talk for hours for the final episode, but like the whole theme of the time machine, of, oh, what would you change in your past or
Yeah, that was
whatever,
really
like, yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I was wondering where they were gonna go with that, and like by the time they got to the final flashback with him and Chuck, like that, I was like, okay, I get this now. Like it was a little over like on the nose with the whole like H.G. Wells time machine book. Like that was a little over like on the nose, but I was very pleased with like how they incorporated that. And I think like his conversation with Jimmy about the time machine thing is like very, very like different, but like not surprising compared to that same conversation with him and Walter. Because like Saul, when he talks about the time machine with Mike, like Mike kind of like understands where he's going with this. And he kind of plays along, and he's like, yeah, like if I could go back, I'd go back to this date, to make sure, things go in the right path and blah 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 blah. Like he knows it's about regret, but like when he's talking to Walter about the same thing, he's like, what are you talking about? Like that's a theoretical and physical impossibility. Like stop being an idiot and blah 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 blah. And it takes like halfway through the conversation for him to finally realize that um that it's, oh, we're talking about regrets, like what regrets do we want to fix. And like he gets a little more human, and I think this is where I found the two comparisons the most interesting, is because Saul kind of more or less gives the same kind of answer. He's like, oh yeah, if I could go back, I would like invest in like make myself richer and blah 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 blah, all this stuff. Mike kind of doesn't say anything, but he kind of, it's subtly implied that he knows that like this is just a facade, that he just like he knows that there's more to it, that he has like another answer but he doesn't want to talk about it. And it's like it's a very like, like we don't talk about it but I get what you're saying sort of thing. But with Walter, he just kind of doesn't understand, and he's like, oh, so you've always been a crook, you've always been, like as Chuck called him, Slippin' Jimmy. Like the way he like has this contempt against Saul, it's like very similar to the way like Saul, like Chuck looks at Jimmy. Like I thought that was like a really interesting comparison. So
That's an interesting point. Like how like I just didn't really think about it that way. How like Mike kind of empathizes. Like okay, you're just trying to like hide what you're like feeling, whatever. And meanwhile, Walter's like, oh, so you're always been this asshole, great. Like well, at this
yeah,
point, Walter just doesn't give a shit about anyone.
yeah,
So yeah, that's really interesting.
yeah. It's almost
Um,
kind of like two halves of like Chuck, which totally makes sense why they end on Chuck, because the Chuck that we see in that flashback is like very like, he believes that there's some good in Jimmy, that he's gonna do good things. But then Walter is also kind of the Chuck at the last time we see him, where he's like chicanery and like, yeah, this is a scam and blah 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 blah, Slippin' Jimmy. Like I thought that was like really interesting thing to think about. So
yeah. Oh, I also wanna really, it's really interesting. I don't know if you've heard all the at least some of the podcasts that they've done, like all the writers and shit.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I haven't listened to all of them. I think I've listened to like a couple episodes from seasons 5 and 6 of Better Call Saul, and I don't think I'll like listen to like every single episode because it's really dense.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. I would recommend you listen to him because it's very interesting insight into not just the writer's room, but just the production of a series in general. Like they legitimately like tell you how they did a scene and what they had to do, and like it's not just the typical shit of oh, we have Bob Odenkirk please explain what you did with the character, the typical shit.
Yeah.
They also invite like oh, this is our location assistant, he's gonna explain to you how hard it was to get this desert or whatever the fuck. Like it's really interesting, and I think it's really great how every single person behind the scenes, they're just as committed, like
yeah.
for example, like we're talking about the music, the cinematography, a lot of the editing is really clever.
Oh yeah.
They brought back one of my favorite gags from Breaking Bad, where like somebody's like cleaning blood off a floor and they cut back to somebody like spilling like salsa or something.
Yeah.
Like they're really like, they get really creative with the editing, and I just as an editor myself, I really love that.
Oh yeah, and I think that's another thing that like doesn't get enough credit. Like this is an incredibly well edited show. Like
yes,
like I don't know why, but when I think of like the editing of this show, I always think of that opening of episode 2 season 1, where like a fleshy red thing is being cut and you don't know what it is, but then you realize it's Tuco like cutting like fruits and vegetables or whatever while he's cooking in the kitchen. Like I love like editing like that. Like that shit is awesome, and you can see that in like the rest of the show, like how like well edited, like that montage where Saul is essentially like going into that security room and having like and giving like cinnamon rolls to Jerry from Parks and Rec. and like making conversation with him so he can see like how long he eats the cinnamon roll, and like how he times everything, and like how like when he notices like the security cameras. Like the editing in that montage specifically like is fucking awesome. Like, and the rest of the show is well edited, but I think like that particular montage in general, like I just love how well edited that particular sequence was. So
Yeah, exactly. And also like they play over like Mission Impossible music over that
oh
scene.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
all he's doing is eating cinnamons, and it's like the most amazing shit ever. It's so funny.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I really liked how and you can see this in the earlier seasons, how like there's more of wear and tear in the opening credits, to the point that literally the last couple episodes it's just like blue screen, and then just in standard like font Better Call Saul, created by Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould. Like I always loved like the little wears and tears and stuff like that. Like that shit is
oh
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's always been one of my favorite things in shows where they change up the intro to like fit the story. So what
Mm-hmm.
they did in here, I was like, yes. Like it was. I love how they did it so suddenly. It was. I really loved it. Like like it reminded me of when they changed up the intro in Gravity Falls at the very end,
Oh yeah, yeah.
where
I know
they
what you're
changed it to
talking
like this
about.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, they changed it to like this really fucked up rendition by Bill Cipher. It's like, oh, okay. Like I really love it when they change up the intros, and I think in this one it makes sense
Yeah.
because thematically this entire time he has been playing VHS. He's playing the past, and now that he's in the present, it stops. So it's really clever actually. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else is there to say other than it's really, really good? Like, cause like I'm thinking about all these like thematic elements, but it's just so good. It's like I don't know, like just watch the fucking show. It's so good.
yeah,
Um,
literally.
yeah. I unless you have anything else to say, I do want to ask like a final question to, I guess, to end the conversation. Unless you had like
um
anything else you wanted to say, because I think I've said everything I wanted to say about.
sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I
because
guess
we can talk more if you want. I don't really care, but I think I've exhausted all like the deep thinking man points I've had to say. So
yeah, no, it's fine. I guess I just wanted to say it's also a question I have. I'm gonna hope to God it's not the same question you have because I'm gonna ruin
probably.
everything. What's your favorite character?
Oh, okay. Not my. That was not the question I was gonna ask.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Um,
Honestly, Nacho's my favorite character.
really?
Yeah, and I think this last season, like, more or less cemented that for me. Not just because he had that really amazing ending, but I just loved his character growth just in general. Because, like, a thing about me is that, like, my favorite TV character of all time is Jesse Pinkman. Like, he's not just my favorite
Yes.
character from Breaking Bad, he's my favorite TV character, period. And what I loved about Nacho is that in a way his not just his like his individual character arc, but like his little quirks and personalities are very, very similar to Jesse. I mean, like he's not like a high school dropout dopehead like Jesse is at the beginning, but he still like has those similar personality traits to Jesse. Like he still cares about like the innocent, and he doesn't want them to get harmed. Like for example, like Jesse doesn't like seeing kids get hurt, and Nacho doesn't want to see his dad get hurt. And like they're kind of like good people, like wrapped up in this like terrible world full of like evil people, like with like cartel members and like killers and assassins and stuff like that. Like Nacho's character arc is very, very like kind of tragic because he throughout the show he's like constantly being manipulated. He's constantly being like told to do this or do that, to spy on this or take a bullet for that. Like he literally had to like take bullets for Gus, only to like sewn back up by like the cousins and like the vet and stuff like that. Like, and that
Yeah.
those final 3 episodes where he is finally free from both, but he's still in danger. But like he's like now like essentially kind of like becoming his own character. He's like kind of unshackling like the chains that he's being attached to either the Salamancas or Gus. And that final moment, like it's not just powerful, not just for the sake of like, oh, this is intense, like, what is he gonna do, but also because like this is kind of like him, like this was his moment, his final stand was very similar to Jesse's final moments in Breaking Bad, where he points the gun at Walt and he's like, you need to tell me to kill you. And then like he like kind of like scream cries like when he drives the El Camino out of like the meth lab and stuff like that. Very, very similar kind of explosive ending moment for Nacho when comparing it to Jesse. And which is why like I think Nacho might be my favorite character in this show. So
He's almost like a more grown up Jesse.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, in a way, he
just
kind of is. Yeah, like it. I think he's more comparable to the Jesse in El Camino than he is the Jesse in Breaking Bad.
exactly, yeah, because
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Jesse in El Camino, yeah, exactly. The Jesse in Camino is a lot like Nacho, and
Yeah.
so I totally get that. Yeah.
What about
For
you?
me, uh, God, it's so fucking difficult because, you know, I guess I'll boil down to three, and I'll be I'll be as brief as possible. I swear.
Sure. Yeah, no
The,
worries. Yeah.
the the most fun to watch is Lalo because he's just fucking
Yeah,
insane.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like he's just chaos in a character. Like legitimately, he's just like when he's almost like something like like
He's kind of like
what
the
the fuck?
antithesis of Gus. Like if Gus is
Yes,
lawful evil, Lalo is chaotic evil.
exactly. Like he's
Yeah.
almost like what the fuck was his name in Invincible, the father character.
Oh, Omni-Man?
Omni-Man. He's almost like
Yeah,
Omni-Man. Like
yeah.
he
Uh-huh.
just whenever he's into a scene, I'm just like, what the fuck is he gonna do? like I'm just terrified. Um, of course, if anybody from Discord is like watching this, this is not even a surprise. Of course, like Kim is like
Oh,
is
hell
probably
yeah. Yeah.
such an amazing character. Like it's
Have
really
you always found it weird that Kim is so beloved, but Skylar got so much hate? Because I feel like Kim and Skylar have a lot in common in terms of like being sort of like wrapped up in their like significant others like endeavors in crime and shit like that. But I've always found it kind of strange that like everyone loves Kim so much, but like everyone hates Skylar. Like I've
I
always found that a
think
bit weird.
yeah, I think it has to do with a lot of like unfortunate, I don't know what's the word, but
Misogyny.
it's misogyny. Yeah, because this is for me personally. I didn't know about the whole Skylar hate until I
Me
finished
neither. Yeah,
Breaking
like
Bad.
Skylar was
Yeah,
honestly one of my favorite characters in Breaking Bad. So when I like looked it up, I was like, wow, people hated Skylar? Like I don't get that at all. Like I think
yeah,
Skylar
cause
was one of the
like
more interesting characters in the show.
yeah, cause like Skylar, when I watched her, she was like, okay, yeah, she's kind of a bitch and she's kind of hypocritical, but then again, her husband,
He's a
cooks
fucking
meth and
drug
didn't,
kingpin. Yeah.
yeah, and lied to her for 2 whole seasons. So I kind of get her, So, I and with Kim, I think has to do with one, Kim. It's not that Kim enabled Jimmy,
I
but
mean, she
Kim.
kind of did.
I mean, yeah, she kind of did by the end, but at the end of season 5 and 6. But like, she also kind of like, hey Jimmy, you shouldn't do this or whatever. But she was a lot more like she liked the thrill of like being with Jimmy and all this scams and shit. Meanwhile, Skylar, the second she like found out Walt was a drug kingpin, she like wanted to get the fuck out, So I think it
Yeah.
unfortunately has to do with like oh, she's not a supportive wife, even though
Yeah.
her husband is fucking psychotic,
Yeah.
So I think it has to do with that, unfortunately. But Kim is probably one of the most interesting characters just because of she's not a lot. Skylar is a very interesting character and well written, but Skylar is basically like written to be a foil
Yeah.
to Walt,
Hmm.
while Kim, she is a foil, but at the same time she like she's like a lot of times she's like the only person Jimmy really like appreciates, and
Yeah.
Kim but that doesn't make Kim like just a love interest. Kim is her own
She's
person,
almost
and
like a
she goes
third
through a
main
lot.
character. Like
Yes.
if Saul and Mike are like the two main characters, she's kind of like the third main character because this is just as much about her as it is about Saul and Mike.
Yeah, exactly. And so just watching her at all, I'm just very interested just to see where her character is going, especially at the very end. Like just watching her, like, you know, kind of like dealing with the with what has been happening, and like, that scene at the bus alone is just like fucking, you know, just soul
Yeah.
destroying that thing. It's like
Mhm.
it's almost like an entire 6 seasons of like, because it's not that Kim has never shown emotions before, but this is the first time we're really like seeing her just completely break down, which is like
Yeah,
fucking insane. So
it's
yeah.
great that you mentioned Kim because I think like if Nacho is my favorite character, then Kim is definitely my second favorite character in this show because she kind of in of herself is kind of like her own. Well, up until the end of season 5 and then a little bit towards season 6, like she kind of becomes her own like Heisenberg type of thing because like she
Yeah.
starts out as like kind of this like straight arrow lawyer, like go by the books, hard work, blah 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 blah. But then like she kind of gets seduced by the ways of Slip and Jimmy because like she realizes that like while while Saul Goodman's like kind of like scummy ways like are a bit sleazy, like they do bring in results. And in the end, she kind of uses those similar tactics in her own like kind of approach when she does like pro bono stuff. Um, and I think like the final moment where it's like at the end of season 5 where like she has that like speech where she's like, I don't know, like let's prank Howard Hamlin, like let's give him what he deserves, blah 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 blah. And then she does like the finger gun thingies. It's like, oh, like this is really interesting because I thought she it seems like she'll go through her own sort of like a very similar journey that Walter White went through. And it seems like that at first because like I forgot which episode it was, episode 2 maybe of season 6, where like they reintroduced the Kettlemans, and
Yeah.
and Saul kind of like says, "Here's some money. Can you like do this thing for us?" But they were like, "No." They refuse. So then Kim kind of like plays dirty. She's like, "Okay, like we try to be nice with you, but you're being asshole, so fuck you. We're gonna do it this way." Where she like uses the phone and like kind of asserts how scary she can be, how like she can be just as like evil as Saul Goodman, but it's only when the threat of death arrives, because when the, Howard dying was like the thing that made her turn away like immediately. Um,
Yeah.
because she is capable of doing just as much evil as Saul, but she has more of a morality than Saul. Like because like Howard's death is a line that she can't cross. Like Jimmy is willing to like kind of step aside that and kind of like do his own thing, but like that's not a line that Kim is willing to go across, and that's why she ends up leaving and like moving to Florida and essentially kind of like she kind of has a very similar life to what like Gene Takovic has, where like she's stuck in like a boring like middle-aged like job, like middle class house, like normal like boring husband, and like she has like dinner parties and stuff like that. Like this is really boring compared to like what she did with like the scheming and the pranks and stuff like that. But
She also lives in Florida, which sucks. I'm just kidding.
yeah, no, it
Um,
does suck. Yeah. But in a way, she kind of like tells herself that like this is a punishment she deserves, and like, and she goes further when like Jimmy like calls her after like God knows how long because she goes back to New Mexico and kind of like confesses like Howard Hamlin's death, like, and like tells Cheryl like what happened and stuff like that. It's like she kind of like starts out as a Walter White character, but then ends up like redeeming herself because she isn't as like evil as these other people. She's kind of like Jesse and Nacho in that sense, like good people stuck in like a world of like crime and like cruelty and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
mhm.
And I guess just to say quickly, um, Jimmy as well, but not just Jimmy. Obviously, Jimmy as a character, I love him.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
for me, a lot of my favorite scenes of Jimmy are just his scenes with Chuck, like any scene with Chuck.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know if you have siblings.
Yeah, I
But
do. Yeah.
for me, the relationship of you know, I
Jimmy
think
and
it's
Chuck.
the best thing in general that has ever portrayed a big brother small brother relationship.
Yeah.
Which me personally, I can really relate to that because it's really complicated, and it has a lot of like shit they have to go through, and like you can tell that both of them really care for each other, but it's just their own egos and their own like bullshit just gets in the way. And of course, you know, not all relationships like that ended like, you know, Chuck's suicide, which is obviously like a very sad extreme. But you know, it is, I do find it really interesting how they've handled that whole relation. Like, I think somebody at the writers' room had this exact same problem, and they really wanted to portray with that's how personally it feels to me, which is why I really love any scene with the two, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I love
So
Chuck.
yeah,
Chuck Chuck is a great character. Yeah. Hmm.
yes, he's
There's
a
no
great
bad
character.
character in this show. Like, I'll just say that. Like, there wasn't a character that I didn't
No,
like. Um,
no.
everyone's just incredibly well written. Like, even fucking like, what was her name? Like, Kaylee's like mom. Like, even she like has some interesting things going on. It's like no one is poorly written, no one is bland or uninteresting. Like, everyone has something going on, and it's really, that's what I love about this show. Like, it feels very grounded and realized. Yeah. So
Even just the most minor who the fuck cares characters have
yeah, the
like
fucking like camera
lots of
crew, for
personality.
example, they have lots of
The
personality.
cam the camera crew, even the guys from Parks and Recreation has a lot of personality.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Jerry. Yeah.
Gary, yeah. You just characters that appear for one episode. You know, they have a lot of like personality, or even like the guy who like Lalo kills and the videotape
Oh yeah,
store or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
You know, he kind of had a like a fun kind of thing going on. You know, like they really try hard to make this world feel alive. You
Hmm.
know, so,
Yeah.
so
So,
I guess, and yeah, your question
well, my
now.
question was kind of like a two-pronged question, which was one, which one do you like more, Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul? Which I don't think is in of itself that of an interesting question. It's just personal preference. But the question that I'm more interested in hearing your answer for is like, if someone has never seen any of this crap, like Breaking Bad, El Camino, Better Call Saul, like how would you recommend them seeing all of that? Because I've thought about this a little bit, and I was like, if I had never seen any of this stuff and I like wanted to get the full experience of everything, I think how I would do it is that I would watch Breaking Bad and El Camino first and then watch Better Call Saul. Like, I think that's, to me, that's the most fulfilling way you can get like the most out of this experience. But I want to know how you would approach this same question.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you because it just comes down to how this whole thing was written.
Yeah.
Because you know, Breaking Bad, which is written as a show, while Better Call Saul is written, you know, as a show as well, but it's also written as an extension of the original show,
Yeah,
something that
you can't
gives
watch Better Call
more
Saul
depth.
without Breaking Bad. Like, let's just stay out of the
Exactly,
way.
yeah.
You can watch Better Call Saul without Breaking Bad, kind of, but you can't watch. Wait, no, let me say that again. I messed that up. You can watch Breaking Bad without Better Call Saul, definitely, but you can't watch Better Call Saul without Breaking Bad. Like, it's not a two-way street on that end.
Yeah, exactly. Because like, you know, because Better Call Saul is it's its own show, sure, but it's also a very
And it's like an
um
extension of Breaking Bad as
it's an
well.
extension. Yeah, it's an extension. It's something that, you know, gives more life to the Breaking Bad world, and not in a shitty way. Like, I don't know, the Star Wars prequels. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
this
I
is
was
what
gonna
happened
say.
before. You know, yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
not
not in
like the
that way.
Hobbit
It's more of
prequels
like
where it's like, this is where Frodo's sword was. back in the day, cool beans. Like it's none of
Yeah,
that shit. Like it's when they try to fill in the blanks of Breaking Bad, it's with purpose. It's like they don't just bring back characters just for like for the fun of it. Like there's purpose. Like there's like a goal behind bringing back characters like Gus or Mike or Walter or Jesse or any of these characters. Like there's purpose behind bringing all these characters back.
yeah, exactly. So I think I'm in the same boat as you, was like, yeah, watch Breaking Bad, then watch El Camino, because it's yeah, it's literally right after Breaking Bad, but
Yeah,
also it ends a very important character. And then Better Call Saul, it just it's almost like, how do I put this? It's like, after watching this whole thing, you want to know, first of all, what happens after. But then the writer's kind of, well, okay, but if you want to know what happens after, you have to know what happened before. So
yeah.
because watching Saul Goodman get caught and confess is like, okay, cool, but
I
after
don't have
six
any
seasons
context behind that.
of
Yeah.
after 6 seasons of character, that scene is just the most like cathartic moment. like
Yeah.
like because you're like watching 6 seasons of this guy, and then all of a sudden he just like starts spilling his guts about everything he regrets. It's like holy shit. Like
Yeah.
it's such a relief to
Yeah.
finally have to realize that, okay, there's still something inside this guy. It's not just funny lawyer man. He's there's still something in him. So that I agree with you that that's the order I
Hmm.
would say. And which one I like more? It's so difficult
Yeah, I
to
don't even
me.
think I can answer this
Breaking Bad,
question. Yeah.
yeah, to me, Breaking Bad is more of a complete story for the same
Hmm.
reasons I just said. And yeah, but a lot of things in Better Call Saul a lot better. Like we said, cinematography, writing, uh, even acting, you could say. So, I guess to me, Breaking Bad is just something where, like, oh, you can just watch this beginning to end and just have this very great show, and still. And in my opinion, a lot of people say, oh, Better Call Saul is very slow. It is, and
Yeah, but it's with
sometimes,
purpose. Yeah, and I like slow
yes,
stuff. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, sometimes, few times it does kind of feel a bit too slow, in my opinion. Better Call
Hmm.
Saul. Mostly in season two. I think season two has the most, like, you could say, quote unquote filler, but I would never say it's a bad season. Whereas in Breaking Bad, like, a lot of people say that season two of Breaking Bad is like the least, I guess eventful, but I would even disagree, because like you get shit like Saul Goodman, you get shit like Jane's death, which is very important to
Planes
the entire
crashing.
series.
Yeah.
The planes, but yeah. So in my opinion, like Breaking Bad feels like the more complete experience. Feels like the most like well put together show. Meanwhile, Better Call Saul, yes, you have to watch Breaking Bad and even kind of El Camino to like get the full thing. But
Yeah.
like Better Call Saul is almost like these two things taken to their maximum potential. Like I said, with cinematography, editing, fucking acting, like these creators, like you can tell that these creators just wanted to push themselves as far as they possibly could. So
Hmm.
in a lot of ways, I like Better Call Saul more on that. But yeah, I guess it just comes down to, like, yeah, what to personal
Personal
preference.
preference. Yeah.
So yeah,
I've
so
always kind of, I've always think it's kind of interesting how, like, for anyone who likes the Fly episode in Breaking Bad, like Better Call Saul is the perfect show for those people. And I like the Fly episode too, but like I liked the Fly episode like just in terms of like its own sort of like bubbled kind of contained sort of like, oh, this is how fancy we can get with like character development and like camera work and stuff like that, because that's like a lot of what Better Call Saul was too. I like both shows, but I like both shows for different reasons. Like Breaking Bad, like you said, is a complete story. There's like a beginning, middle, and end that they're trying to reach, and it's a very fulfilling character arc as well, to see Walter and also Jesse as well kind of like reach this point in their lives where, they go from completely different people. But in Better Call Saul, it's more of like a slower character study where it's kind of examining who is like Saul and Mike and Gus and all these people. So it's more like apples and oranges to me. But what are you gonna do? So,
Yep,
mhm,
I agree with that. I
yeah.
really agree with that.
So yeah, any final thoughts you want to give? Because now I'm definitely out of things to say. I've exhausted all of the things I wanted to say about this show. Yeah, other than it's good. It's really great. Yeah.
Um, I guess I'll only say this. The only thing, the one tiny insignificant thing that they should really, they really could have improved. They need better Spanish coaches. But other than that,
Yeah,
this
but
show's amazing.
I get that's not something the shows really give a shit about. And I think
Yeah.
you mentioned this to me before. But when you were talking about how like Gus particularly, his Spanish is awful. Like once I paid attention to that, I was like, wow. Like compared to how Lalo speaks Spanish, like the way Gus like enunciates or like emphasizes specific words that the other Spanish speakers don't, I was like, wow, this is kind of distracting. But whatever. What can you do? So.
Yeah. It's
Mhm.
really, and especially funny because he's Chilean, and the thing about Chileans is they speak really fast,
And he's
and Gus
speaking really
doesn't.
slow. Yeah.
so, which is really funny. But yeah, other than that, fucking perfect shit. I love it so
Hmm.
much. So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess those are my final things.
Would you give this show a rating? Um.
Ooh, uh,
Yeah.
fuck
I
me.
I guess I can go first. I'll give this. So I'm gonna rate like Better Call Saul just in general, not just the final season. I think I would give Better Call Saul like a 9 out of 10, just purely
Mhm.
because, like you said, like there were definitely a couple moments where the show got too slow and it just kind of like was meandering about a little bit. But I still think this is a really excellent show. So I think like a 9 out of 10 is like overall is like a very fitting rating for this. The final season is like a 10 out of 10. I think the final season's fucking perfect. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
but I think overall like a 9 out of 10 for Better Call Saul as a whole is like a very appropriate rating. So
Yeah. I guess for me, I would give. I think I'm in the same boat as you. Better Call Saul is a 9.
yeah,
But it's a very high 9. It's a very almost 10. But
me as well. Yeah.
uh, yeah. But it's just some things, some very tiny things are there. I'm like, okay, calm down. 9 for now.
Yeah.
And I guess for all of it, Breaking Bad for me is a 10.
Yeah.
Has
Breaking
some
Bad is
dumb things,
also
but
10 for me as well. Yeah.
yeah, has some tiny things, but in my opinion, Breaking Bad, the dumb things are completely overshadowed by
Mhm.
just the amazing shit that they were pulled off, and
Yeah. I
and I
remember giving
guess
El
yeah,
Camino a 7, but honestly, in retrospect, I want to give it an 8 now because like
I have
in
it as an 8. Yeah,
yeah, in context like of everything we've talked about, it's like I gave it a 7 just purely because I was a bit confused. Like, why is this a movie? Like, why couldn't this just be more of Breaking Bad? But like now, I guess I'm slowly understanding why it had to be a film and like how this adds to the Breaking Bad universe. Like, I think like if I ever see it again, I'll probably change my rating to an 8. So yeah.
yeah, it's almost like because here's the thing I really respect about the entire team, sorry, is that they really take things that could really be just cynical, dumb things and
Yeah.
really make it work. Like for example, the whole Camino movie, from what I understand, it was basically just like a way to be like, oh, Breaking Bad is 10 years old now, so we're gonna celebrate with a movie, but they really take that chance to like make a really interesting character study on
Hmm.
Jesse. So and the same thing with Better Call Saul. Better Call Saul can just be like, oh, Breaking Bad was successful, so let's just make a spin-off about the funny lawyer man and have some cameos and people will clap. And they dared, honestly, they dared to like, because it was really because like um people watch Breaking Bad, they want to see more Breaking Bad, but they were instead were like, okay, we're gonna give you more Breaking Bad, but we're just gonna give you a bunch of lawyer shit and you're gonna care about it. So
yeah, and that's what I
it
found
was
so fascinating is that like even though I wanted more Breaking Bad, I found all the lawyer stuff way more interesting than like the cartel like Breaking Bad shit and Better Call Saul. Like that's how incredibly well written this show is.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but I think like if you want more Breaking Bad stuff, I think El Camino is the more appropriate like thing to look towards because I look at El Camino as like the perfect blending of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul because like it has the elements of like urgency and like the need for like the plot to keep going and like the character needs to be pushed to keep going because like like Walter had that in Breaking Bad where he's like he was constantly like on the run from like the DEA and like Hank was always like you didn't know if Hank was like going to catch like Heisenberg and stuff like that. There's like that sense of urgency in El Camino and like action scenes with like the gun Wild West gun duel thing, but there was also that sense of like slowness and like moments of character study, and I think that's especially the case with like his relationship with Todd in those flashback scenes. Like those were very Better Call Saul-esque, and I think El Camino is like the perfect blending of the two. So,
Yeah, I agree with that. It's really like bombastic, but at the same time it's really character driven, and
yeah,
especially with a lot of the flashbacks. So yeah,
yeah. So yeah, that sums it up. Breaking Bad 10, El Camino 8, Better Call Saul 9. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And now I have to search for something else to be completely
Yeah, now
obsessed
I
over.
have yeah, it sucks now because now I have to like find a new show for me to like, have this obsessive like, feeling about. So,
Yeah.
apparently Vince Gilligan's gonna work on a new show. So, it's apparently gonna be
Um,
more X-Files than Breaking Bad, but whatever. I'll see whatever.
whatever the fuck he does, I'm gonna watch it.
Me
So
too.
that's how it works. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for coming on to this discussion. I'm glad I could finally vent all my feelings about Better Call Saul and this entire universe as a whole. So
Oh no, thanks to you. I actually listen to a lot of Timmy and things and your podcast. Like, oh, I want to jump into it. It seems fun. So
yeah,
I
no,
really thank you.
yeah, I'm glad you could come on. Yeah, because I love having discussions like this.